I had never imagined that a single phone call could turn my entire life upside down. One minute I was sitting in my small apartment in Chicago, sipping black coffee and scrolling through the news, thinking about my boring Monday ahead. The next, I was on the floor of the hospital, clutching my mother's frail hand, listening to words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "Ethan, I kidnapped you from your father," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the steady beep of the heart monitor. "He's a billionaire, and you were his son." Her words echoed in my head, bouncing around like a broken record I couldn't turn off. My mind refused to process it. Me, kidnapped. Billionaire father? It sounded insane. Completely insane. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. Instead, all I could do was sit there, frozen, as the nurse gave me a sympathetic look and told me to be strong. Strong? How was I supposed to be strong when the person I trusted most in the world had just confessed to a lifetime of lies? I had always believed I was just normal, average, struggling, working odd jobs to pay bills, worrying about car repairs, rent, taxes, the usual middle-class stress. My mother had always been my rock, the one constant in a life that felt ordinary, predictable. And now, she had just blown it all to pieces. Her hand twitched slightly in mine, and she coughed. "Ethan, promise me. You'll find him, you have to know the truth before it's too late." And then she was gone. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling, my brain refusing to accept reality. My mother, my safe, loving mother, had stolen me from the man who could have given me everything. My father, billionaire father. My mind reeled. Why? Why would she do that? And most importantly, where was he now? I left the hospital in a daze. Chicago streets blurred past me, the honking cars, the shouting pedestrians. The smell of hot dogs from a nearby car tit all felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life. I didn't know where to start. I didn't even know his name. But my mother's words replayed in my head, "You were his son." For the first time in decades, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Anger. Pure, burning anger. My mother had lied to me my entire life, held me back, kept me from the world I could have had, all because, why? Fear. Pride? Madness? That night, I sat in my small apartment, the city lights twinkling outside my window, and made a decision. I was going to find him, my father. The billionaire who had been robbed of his son? By the woman I had loved the most? It wouldn't be easy. It never is when you're dealing with people who have money, power, and secrets. But I had something they didn't expect. Me. And my mother's final confession was my weapon. Asterisk. I remember walking into the hospital room like it was yesterday. My mother's face was pale, her hair streaked with gray, her breathing shallow. I had called her earlier that day because I had a strange feeling something wasn't right. And now, as I held her frail hand, I realized I was right. "Mom," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. "You look different. Are you okay?" She gave me a weak smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you. A long time ago," her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. "I had no idea what was coming, but I could feel my heart start to race. I wasn't completely honest with you. About your father." Her voice trembled, each word painfully slow. You weren't supposed to know this until much later. But time. It's running out for me." I leaned closer, my hand clutching hers tightly. "Mom, what are you saying?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I kidnapped you. From him, your father. He's alive, Ethan. Richer than anyone could imagine. A billionaire. And you were his son. He never knew I took you. I thought I was protecting you, but..." She coughed violently, and the nurse rushed in, giving me a warning look. I nodded and backed away. When I turned back, she had collapsed against the pillow, exhaustion and illness taking over. Her eyes found mine again, filled with pleading, regret, and love. "Promise me," she whispered. "Find him. Before it's too late, Ethan. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was spinning. My mother, my protector, my hero, had taken me from a world I didn't even know existed. I had lived my whole life in struggle, unaware of a fortune that could have been mine. Anger, confusion, and curiosity collided in my chest. Who was my father? Why had she done it? And more importantly, could I even face him after all this time? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory. Every story my mother had told me about my father, or rather, the lack of stories. I realized how carefully she had kept me away. How every lie, every excuse, every story had been a shield to hide the truth. And now that shield was gone. By morning, I had made my first decision. I would find him, no matter what it took. I would uncover every secret, every document, every lead. I didn't know if he would hate me, love me, or even believe me, but I had to try. Because if my mother's last words were true, my life had just changed forever. Growing up, I had always felt different. Not in a way kids talk about, like being tall or short or having weird hobbies. No, it was deeper than that. There was a sense of absence, like a piece of the puzzle of my life was missing. I used to ask my mother about my father, trying to fill in the blanks. She always smiled softly, dodged the question, or gave me some vague story about a man who was too busy to be part of our lives. I never questioned her too much. Kids tend to trust their parents blindly, and I was no exception. My mother worked 2 jobs just to keep our tiny apartment in Chicago livable. I remember the nights she came home exhausted. Her hands raw from cleaning offices and grocery stores, but she always made time to tuck me in. She was my world, my anchor. And in those quiet moments, I didn't feel like anything was missing. But shadows always have a way of creeping in. I can still see myself at 10, staring out the window as other kids' parents drove them to soccer games in shiny SUVs, or picked them up from private piano lessons. My mother drove an old blue Ford that coughed more than it ran, and we never had extra money for anything beyond rent, groceries, and the occasional night at a cheap diner. I didn't know then that my father's world was light years away from ours. Billion-dollar companies, yachts, private jets, things I wouldn't even know existed until decades later. School wasn't easy either. Kids can be cruel when you don't fit in. My clothes were always secondhand, my sneakers a little too big or too small depending on what my mother could scrounge up. I got the usual bullying, poor kid, loser. Blue Ford loser, all the things 10-year-olds shout when they think they're clever. I wanted to fight back. But my mother always stopped me. Ethan, she'd say, fighting won't solve anything. Just keep your head down and work hard. One day it'll all make sense. I didn't understand what she meant. I thought she was just trying to protect me from the schoolyard chaos, and maybe she was. But now I realize she wasn't just protecting me from kids. She was protecting me from the truth. The first time I suspected something was off, I was 12. I had found an old photograph hidden at the back of a drawer her dresser, the one she always kept locked. The picture showed a man in a tailored suit, standing in a grand mansion with a toddler in his arms. A man who looked powerful, confident, untouchable. And the child in his arms looked exactly like me. My heart stopped. "Mom," I asked, showing her the photo. She froze. Her eyes widened slightly, and then she composed herself. That's someone from my past, Ethan. Nothing for you to worry about. I asked more questions. She gave vague answers. I pressed harder. She got angry once, saying, "Some things are better left alone." That night, I went to sleep with more questions than answers, my mind spinning with possibilities I couldn't name yet. High school brought more complications. I worked part-time jobs to help my mom, tutoring kids after school, washing dishes at a local diner, anything I could do to keep our bills paid. I got decent grades, but college seemed impossible. I wasn't rich, I wasn't connected, and I didn't even know if I had a future beyond survival. Still, I dreamed. I imagined a life that was bigger than our cramped apartment. A life where I didn't have to worry about rent, where I could walk into a store and buy whatever I wanted, where I could explore the world instead of just looking at it from the cracked window of our building. I didn't know it then, but those dreams weren't just wishful thinking. They were whispers of a reality my mother had stolen from me. And yet, for all the struggles, there were little moments of joy. Birthday parties at the park, late-night talks with my mom where she told me stories of heroes and legends, quiet afternoons where we'd cook together and laugh about nothing. She was all I had, and I loved her. Blindly, completely. I trusted her in a way I now realize I shouldn't have. It wasn't until that hospital room 3 months ago, it's the day she spoke those words, that I understood the truth. That photograph wasn't a relic of the past. It was a glimpse into a world I had been robbed of. My life, the life I had lived, had been deliberately hidden from me. My mother, my protector, had made a choice that altered my entire existence. I went through old boxes, letters, anything my mother might have left behind. Hidden in a dusty envelope was a folded piece of paper, almost like a note meant to be discovered someday. In her handwriting, shaky and hurried, it said, "Ethan, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I wanted to protect you. I thought I was doing the right thing. But the truth, you need to know the truth. Your father, he is alive. He is everything I told you he wasn't. You were his son, Ethan. And now, it's your turn to claim what's yours." I couldn't breathe. I felt my chest tighten, my hands shake. $1 billion fortune. A man who had been my father all along, and me. Just some kid he never knew, living a life of struggle, completely unaware. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at that note, trying to piece together how my life had gone so wrong and what I needed to do next. One thing was clear. I couldn't waste another second. My mother had kept me safe in her way, but now it was my turn. I had a father to find, a fortune to uncover, a life to claim, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even the people who had kept my father's world hidden from me, stand in my way. Asterisk the morning after I read my mother's note, I felt like a different man. Sleep had been impossible. Every hour was consumed with thoughts of him, my father, the man I had never met. I paced around my small apartment, muttering to myself, trying to figure out where to even start. Billionaire, wealthy beyond imagination. And I had no name, no address, no clue. Just the vague memory of that photograph and my mother's dying confession. I opened my laptop and began the only thing I could think of, the search. Public records, old newspaper articles, real estate filings, charity donations, anything that might point to him. I scrolled through lists of CEOs, tech tycoons, philanthropists, the usual suspects of the American billionaire class. Each profile felt like a possibility. Each headline made my pulse quicken. Mergers, acquisitions, yachts, private jets. And then a name popped up. Jonathan Whitaker. He was 65, exactly the age my mother had been hinting at. A tech mogul based in New York, founder of Whitaker Industries worth billions. He had everything the life I had been denied. And according to the archives, he had never remarried or had any children publicly acknowledged. My pulse raced. Could this be him? Could Jonathan Whitaker, a man whose face I had never seen, be my father? I spent hours digging deeper. Old interviews, photos from charity galas, corporate press releases, everything painted a picture of a man disciplined, calculating, untouchable. He wasn't someone who tolerated mistakes, and he certainly didn't entertain anyone outside his circle. Reaching him wasn't going to be easy. By afternoon, I knew I had to get out of Chicago. This was bigger than me, bigger than my apartment, my part-time jobs, my ordinary life. If I wanted answers, I needed to be where he lived, where his world existed. I booked a flight to New York that night. First class, because I needed to move in his world without looking like, well, someone from nowhere. Landing in Manhattan was overwhelming. The city pulsed with life-yellow cabs weaving through traffic, skyscrapers casting shadows, businessmen and women striding purposefully like they owned the world. And in a way, Jonathan Whitaker did. But now, I needed to step into that world too. I started small, restaurants near his corporate headquarters, upscale hotels where he was rumored to stay, charity events that were publicly announced. Each place I visited, I asked discreet questions, observed carefully. Tried not to look like a man on a mission, but I was. Every waiter, security guard, and receptionist could be a piece of the puzzle. 3 days in, I caught my first break. A security guard outside a Whitaker Industries building. Older, graying, but sharp. Mentioned casually, Mr. Whitaker is often in the garden room on the 42nd floor this time of year. If you have business, you might need to schedule an appointment. I didn't have an appointment. I had nothing official, just a desperate need to confront a man who could be my father. But the guard's words gave me hope. A thread, a lead. And for the first time since my mother's confession, hope felt tangible. I started exploring the city around him, blending in at charity galas and public talks, learning everything about him that newspapers didn't tell. And that's when the warnings began. Strange men started noticing me. I would catch them watching from a distance, following subtly, disappearing when I turned my head. The kind of people who didn't just exist, they worked for someone who protected a billionaire. I was poking around in their territory. One evening, a man in a tailored suit cornered me outside a cafe. "Mr. Ethan, I assume?" He said politely, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "You shouldn't be looking for him. It's dangerous. Walk away." I held my ground. "I'm not leaving. I have a right to find him. He's my father." The man's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. You think this is a game? It's not. Billionaires have enemies. Powerful people, and you. You're just a man with questions. Questions don't protect you." I didn't flinch. In fact, I felt a surge of determination. Threats didn't scare me, they fueled me. My mother had lied to me, robbed me of my life, and now I had the chance to claim it. I wasn't going to back down. The next lead came from an unexpected place. Private investigator I hired under the radar. A woman named Lisa, sharp, intuitive, no nonsense, with connections in New York's elite circles. She dug up records that weren't public, satellite photos of private estates, staff rosters, luxury vehicle registrations. Every detail brought me closer. And then the first solid clue arrived. A photograph of Jonathan Whitaker at a charity gala, holding a framed photo of a child. The resemblance was uncanny. My heart raced as I stared at the picture. It had to be me. It had to, Lisa warned me. "Ethan, if he's as powerful as I think, you need to be careful. Billionaires don't like surprises. And this one, I don't think he's ever had family issues. You could be walking into a storm." I nodded, more certain than ever. I was ready for the storm. I had to be. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I would attend the next public event Whitaker was scheduled for, a charity gala downtown. Not as a guest, not as a random person, but as someone who belonged in his world, someone prepared. And I would confront him, face to face. Ask the questions I had lived my whole life waiting for. Why wasn't I allowed in your life? Why did my mother take me? This was no longer a search. It was a reckoning. And I was ready to step into the eye of the storm, the moment I decided to attend the charity gala. A strange mix of fear and excitement coursed through me. Fear, because I had no idea how Jonathan Whitaker would react if I approached him. Excitement, because after months of chasing fragments of information, I was finally steps away from the man who could change my life forever. I spent hours preparing. I rented a suit that cost more than my apartment, practiced my posture, even rehearsed what I might say. Not that I knew for sure what to say. "Hello, I'm your son?" Didn't seem like it would work in polite society. But I had a plan. Get close, observe, and find an opening. The night of the gala. Manhattan's skyline glittered behind me as I stepped out of a sleek black car. The event was held in a luxury hotel ballroom. Chandeliers dripping light onto polished floors and well-dressed people laughing, sipping champagne, and pretending they didn't have to answer to anyone. I felt like an intruder in a world that wasn't mine. And in a way, it wasn't. Not yet. I moved carefully, scanning the crowd. Security was tight, as expected. There were men in dark suits with earpieces watching every corner, whispering into radios, the kind of men who could ruin my life with a single glance. I stayed calm, walking like I belonged, though every nerve in my body screamed otherwise. And then I saw him. Jonathan Whitaker. Taller than I imagined, hair silvered at the temples, eyes sharp as a hawk. He laughed with a few men, a genuine smile that betrayed his carefully curated image. My heart thumped. This was him, the father I never knew. The man my mother had stolen me from. Before I could move closer, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around to see the man in the tailored suit from earlier, the one who had warned me. He looked tense. Almost. "I told you, Ethan. This isn't a game. Leave now." "I can't," I said quietly, matching his intensity. "I need to meet him. He's my father." His eyes narrowed. "If you go in there, you risk more than just humiliation." People connected to him. They don't forgive easily. You're not prepared for what's coming. I ignored the warning and slipped past him, blending into the crowd. My eyes never left Jonathan. I had to figure out the right moment, the right approach. But fate, or perhaps my recklessness, intervened. Halfway across the ballroom, I felt someone grab my arm from behind and drag me into a quiet hallway. I struggled, but the man was stronger. He shoved me against the wall. "You don't understand who you're dealing with," he hissed. His face was partially hidden, but the anger was clear. "You're meddling in things far beyond your understanding. Stop looking for him, or there will be consequences." I stared at him, chest heaving, trying to keep my composure. "I don't care. He's my father. I have the right to find him," the man smirked, almost impressed. "Brave, foolish. Same difference. You've been warned." And then he disappeared into the crowd as quickly as he appeared, leaving me shaken but resolute. I knew then that my search wasn't just about finding my father anymore. It was about surviving the people who wanted to keep us apart. My mother's past wasn't clean. It was tangled in secrets, lies, and powerful enemies. And now I was in the CROSS, HAIRS. The next day I met Lisa, my private investigator, to debrief. "You're lucky he didn't make it worse," she said, placing a folder on the table. "I've uncovered more about your mother than I thought possible. She wasn't just hiding you from your father. She was hiding from someone. Powerful people with their own agenda. And if they realize you're on the move, you'll be a target." I flipped through the files, photos, letters, and old legal documents that traced my mother's life before I was born. The revelations were staggering. She had connections to corporate espionage, backroom deals, and a circle of people who would kill to protect Whitaker Industries' secrets. My father's empire wasn't just a business, it was a fortress. And now I was sneaking around the moat. Lisa looked at me, serious. "Ethan, listen. You have to be careful. Not just for yourself, but for him too. If the wrong people connect the dots, they could see you as a threat. Billionaires don't just lose their privacy, they lose their peace. And people die over things like this." I nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This wasn't just about reunion or revenge anymore. It was about strategy, patience, and surviving long enough to get the answers I needed. That night, I returned to my hotel room, heart pounding, and plotted my next steps. The gala had been my first glimpse into his world. The threats I encountered were a reminder that every move had consequences. But I wasn't going to stop. I had been robbed of my life once. I wasn't about to let anyone rob me again, not my mother's enemies. Not fate, and certainly not the shadows of the past. I spent hours reviewing every scrap of information Lisa had found. Addresses, staff names, schedules, security rotations, every detail mattered. By the time I went to sleep, exhaustion had taken over. But my resolve was ironclad. In the following days, the threats continued. Anonymous notes slipped under my door, strange cars parked outside my hotel, and men lurking near restaurants I visited. The more danger I encountered, the more it fueled my determination. My mother's confession had opened a door to a world I didn't know existed, and I was going to walk through it, no matter the cost. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I wouldn't just attend another event. I would orchestrate my own introduction. A controlled approach, calculated steps, and no impulsive mistakes. I would get close to my father without alarming anyone. And when I finally stood before him, he would have no choice but to face the truth. The shadows were closing in, but I was ready. Asterisk, I remember the first time I saw him up close. Jonathan Whitaker, the man who had unknowingly been my father for 65 years. The moment was nothing like I imagined, not in movies, not in fantasies. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a force. Every movement measured, every word precise, every gesture commanding attention, and yet there was something human in his eyes, something I recognized instantly. I had arranged the meeting carefully, with Lisa's help. A private room at a high-end club in Manhattan, a neutral setting where I could talk without interference from security, staff, or worse, his enemies. When he walked in, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, I felt my stomach tighten. This was him, the man my mother had stolen me from, my father. He stopped a few feet away, studying me like I was an unexpected variable in an equation. "Ethan, is it?" His voice was calm, almost cold, but his eyes searched mine. "I've been told to expect you," I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, my name is Ethan. I believe I'm your son." He raised an eyebrow, not amused, but intrigued. "Your mother told you?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, she told me before she passed that you were my father, that she kidnapped me." His face tightened briefly, just a flicker, and then returned to neutrality. "I see." He paused, letting the weight of his presence settle between us. "You understand the implications of what you're saying? This is not a casual revelation." "I understand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through me. "I've lived my entire life without knowing you. I've been robbed of my childhood, my opportunities, my life. I need answers. And I think you deserve to know the truth, too." He studied me for a long moment, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Then, surprisingly, he sat down, gesturing for me to do the same. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." And so I did. I told him about my childhood, the struggles, the empty apartment, the part-time jobs. It's a constant feeling that something was missing. I told him about the photograph I had found, my mother's lies, and her dying confession. Every detail spilled out, my voice catching at times, my hands shaking. He listened silently, eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers, his expression unreadable. "And your mother? She chose to raise you herself. Protected you from what, exactly?" "From me." "I don't know," I admitted. "She said she was protecting me. But from what? From your world? From people who might have hurt me? I don't know. All I know is she kept me away from you. And now I'm here." Jonathan Whitaker was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, his voice softer now. "You look like her. The same eyes, the same stubbornness. I wish I had known. I wish I had a chance to raise you." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. "You can't change the past," I said quietly. "But maybe we can fix the future." He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "Maybe we can, but this isn't simple. My world. The people around me. Your mother's actions, they've created a mess. One I'm not sure you understand yet." "I understand more than you think," I replied. "And I'm not here to fight anyone. I'm here for answers. And if it's possible, a chance to be a part of your life." He studied me again, searching for any hint of deceit, any weakness. But there was none. Just determination, anger at the years stolen, and a hunger for truth. Finally, he exhaled. A mixture of relief and resignation. "You're my son. That part is undeniable. And I want to know you. But understand this. My life isn't like yours. It's complicated, dangerous sometimes. There are people who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you, to hurt anyone who gets close to me. Are you ready for that?" "I'm ready," I said firmly. "I've waited my whole life for this moment. I'm not going anywhere." A faint smile touched his lips, a rare, genuine one. "Then we start there. Slowly, carefully, But we start. Just like that. A door that had been closed my entire life began to open. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of a world I had only dreamed about. A life my mother had stolen from me. And a man who, despite everything, was willing to let me in. Yet, even as relief washed over me, a part of me remained wary. My mother's past wasn't clean. Her enemies, the people who had warned me, the shadows lurking in every corner, they hadn't disappeared. And I knew that our reunion, as joyous as it might have been, was just the beginning. The real challenge, the revenge, the justice, the reclamation of everything stolen was still ahead, and I was ready for it. The days after meeting my father were a whirlwind. Jonathan Whitaker wasn't just a man. He was a universe of power, influence, and wealth. And while part of me wanted to dive headfirst into this world, another part knew the stakes. My mother's past, the people who had warned me, the whispers of threats. I had to be smart. Quick, but smart. I couldn't afford mistakes. Lisa had already mapped out the first phase of my plan. Gather intelligence, understand the power dynamics around my father, and identify the people who might try to block me. Whitaker Industries was a fortress not just financially, but politically. Competitors, board members, advisors, they all had agendas. And someone, somewhere, had reason to fear my presence. My first move was subtle. I spent hours in the offices, talking to people who worked under Jonathan, serving patterns, noting who seemed loyal and who seemed wary. Everyone had a role, and everyone had weaknesses. I had to exploit them carefully. One night, I got my first real opportunity. A private investor meeting, high stakes, million-dollar deals in progress. Jonathan had left briefly, and a man named Paul, a longtime rival and power broker in the company, was gloating over a merger that would shift control of several subsidiaries. I approached cautiously. Pretending to be an analyst from a partner firm, Paul didn't recognize me, and his arrogance made him careless. "So, you think you can outmaneuver Whitaker, do you?" He sneered, not knowing I was the son of the very man whose empire he coveted. "I'm not here to outmaneuver anyone," I said smoothly, keeping my voice calm, professional. "I'm here to ensure the deal doesn't backfire. You might want to reconsider some of your assumptions." He laughed. "And who are you to give advice?" I smiled faintly. "Someone who understands what's at stake. Someone who's not afraid to act when others hesitate." That night, I leaked subtle information to key board members, carefully manipulating the perception of Paul's intentions. Within a week, he found himself under scrutiny, losing credibility and influence. My father noticed, but he didn't suspect me, at least. Not yet. Lisa warned me. "Ethan, this is delicate. You're playing with fire. One wrong move, and they'll know you're involved. Billionaires don't forgive interference in their business, even if it's family." "I know," I said, "but it has to be done. This is how I claim my place. Not by demanding it, but by proving I belong." Prove it I did. I started attending high-profile events as Jonathan's companion, slowly building trust with his inner circle. I asked questions, showed insight, and demonstrated value. People began to see me not as an intruder, but as someone competent. Someone who could handle the pressure of his world. Meanwhile, I began unraveling the final layer of my mother's deception. I discovered accounts she had hidden, documents she had forged, and letters she had written to powerful people warning them away from me. Every revelation fueled my resolve. I wasn't just reclaiming wealth, I was righting the wrongs of a lifetime. The first major confrontation came unexpectedly. Paul, realizing his influence was slipping, attempted to corner me at a gala, surrounded by his allies. "You don't belong here," he growled, leaning close enough for me to feel his breath. "I do," I replied steadily. "And if you continue to underestimate me, you'll regret it." He laughed, but that confidence cracked when, moments later, Jonathan entered the room. His eyes locked on mine, and in that instant, Paul understood he had lost not because I had attacked him directly, but because I had become untouchable in his father's eyes. Weeks later, the final piece fell into place. Jonathan and I went through the legal channels, uncovering documents, contracts, and hidden investments. Every transaction, every offshore account, every hidden asset my mother had blocked was exposed. And when it was all revealed, the truth was undeniable. I was his son, the rightful heir to his empire. The moment I realized I had one, a strange mix of emotions hit me. Satisfaction, yes, but also a profound sadness. All the years lost, the childhood stolen, the struggles I endured, they couldn't be reclaimed. But I had survived. I had outsmarted everyone who thought they could keep me away. And in the process, I had secured my future. Jonathan, sitting across from me in his office, finally looked at me with something I had never expected. Pride. "Ethan," he said quietly, "you've done more than I ever imagined. Not just because of your position, but because of how you handled everything. You're strong, clever, and yes, you're my son." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you for trusting me, for letting me in." He smiled faintly. "It's just the beginning. There will be challenges, people who won't accept this. But together, we can handle them." I realized something crucial. Revenge wasn't about hatred or anger anymore. It was about claiming what was mine, my life, my identity, my family. And nothing, no one could take that away. Asterisk, the day finally came. The day my life would change forever. I sat in Jonathan Whitaker's office, the skyline of Manhattan stretching behind him, my hands trembling slightly, though I tried to appear composed. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything stolen from me, everything my mother had hidden, and the life I had been denied. Jonathan looked at me with a quiet intensity. "Ethan, you've earned this not just because you're my son, but because of how you handled everything. You didn't let greed or anger control you. You acted with intelligence and patience. And now, it's time." He handed me a folder. I opened it slowly, carefully, expecting contracts, legal documents, the standard inheritance papers. But inside, it was more than that. Accounts, trusts, offshore investments, enough wealth to make even the most seasoned finance's jaws drop. And at the center of it all, a single statement. Ethan Whitaker is the sole heir to Whitaker Industries and all associated assets. I stared at the words, unable to believe what I was seeing. $2.4 billion. That number didn't just represent wealth, it represented freedom, power, and justice for every year of struggle I had endured. Jonathan's voice broke the silence. "This isn't just about money. It's about legacy. Your mother made choices she thought were right. She protected you the only way she knew how. But now, the world is yours to navigate. Wisely." Tears pricked at my eyes. For decades I had felt powerless, trapped in a life that wasn't mine, robbed of opportunities and happiness, and now, in one moment, it had all changed. But more than the money, it was the acknowledgement, the recognition that I belonged, that I was not a mistake or a stolen secret. I was a Whitaker. The first days after the inheritance were surreal. Media outlets speculated endlessly. Who is Ethan Whitaker? The mysterious heir of a billionaire empire. I ignored them. The past few months had taught me that attention was a double-edged sword. What mattered was reclaiming my life, my family, and my future. I spent time with Jonathan, learning the intricacies of his empire, understanding the responsibilities that came with such wealth. I realized quickly that being a billionaire wasn't just about money. It was about strategy, leadership, and resilience. Qualities I had developed without even realizing it, growing up in a world that had tried to limit me, and then came the moment I had anticipated for so long, confronting the shadow of my mother's enemies. They had tried to block me, manipulate me, and intimidate me. But now, armed with my inheritance, influence, and the truth, I was untouchable. Their schemes fell apart as quickly as they had been conceived. One by one, they realized that Ethan Whitaker was no longer a powerless boy. They were facing a man who had claimed what was rightfully his. Yet, amid the triumph, there was still a part of me that mourned the years lost. I would never get those childhood memories back, never know what it felt like to grow up in luxury or be raised by my real father. But I understood something crucial. The past was gone, but the future was mine. And this future, I would shape it on my own terms. A few weeks later, I sat with Jonathan in his office, overlooking the city that had been both a dream and a battlefield. "You've done well," he said quietly, a rare softness in his eyes. "I couldn't have imagined you handling all of this at such a young age." "I had to," I replied. "Not just for me. For us. For the family I never knew I had." He nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You've earned more than money, Ethan. You've earned respect, wisdom, and the right to call yourself my son." In that moment, the weight of everything lifted: the stolen childhood, the lies, the struggles, the years of uncertainty. I had fought, survived, and now I had arrived. The billionaire world I had only glimpsed from afar was mine. Yes, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my identity, my family, and my life. And as I stepped out onto the balcony, feeling the wind of Manhattan brush against my face, I realized something I hadn't before. Revenge was never about destruction. It was about reclaiming what was taken, standing tall in the face of betrayal, and creating a future that was truly yours. I looked down at the city lights, each one a small promise of possibility, and whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. The journey from a stolen childhood to billionaire heir had been long, treacherous and painful, but I had emerged victorious, stronger, smarter, unbroken. And now, the world had no choice but to notice Ethan Whitaker,